Welcome back to what will be my final review for the year of 2020. May this year rest in peace. I'm wrapping it up with, of course, the book that was one of my honorable mentions of my top reads of the year, and that is I just really wanted to do that again. The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. Now, let's just jump right into what this book is. So The Forgetting Moon is book 1 by Brian Lee Durfee in the Five Warrior Angels saga. Now, this is a series that was initially planned to be 5 books, and after speaking to Brian himself about why it became 3 books, it essentially was a publishing thing to push for 3 fat epic books as opposed to 5. So same story, just condensed to 3 books instead of 5. They're chunky boys. This book is long as hell. The Blackest Heart, which is book 2, is even bigger. And The Lonesome Crown, which is book 3, is going to be gigantic to the Stormlight level, I believe he said in a recent video. Now, there were going to be 2 others initially, and I'm looking at the back of the book just to make sure I got the names right, which were Ethic Shroud and Afflicted Fire. Now, if you're wondering, what the hell does that mean? These are the 5 weapons of Lyjan, which Lyjan is essentially God in this universe, or a god that is believed in, kind of the creator of the world. And these are each 5 sort of legendary weapons that exist in the world, sort of like the weapons that exist in many other fantasies. John Gwynne comes to mind with Faithful and the Fallen, where there's kind of like artifacts that have like a religious background to them and play a role in the world that is created. So The Forgetting Moon is the first installment of this series that takes place in the 5 Isles. Now, most of it has been conquered, except for Gul'Kana, which is the last remaining sort of bastion that has not been conquered by the Sorcerer, who is basically this big invading force led by the Angel Prince. And that is sort of the looming overall backdrop to this series, at least in book 1, where this invasion is coming. And then you're going to follow your characters through the story while this is sort of happening in the background and making its way to Gul'Kana, which is where this book takes place. So this is a traditional epic fantasy in every sense of the word. You are given sort of a prologue in the beginning, followed immediately by your main protagonist, Nail, who is the main and probably least interesting character of all the characters that you get POV chapters of. But by the end of the book, much in the way that he reminded me of Corbin from Faithful and the Fallen, he's probably the least interesting in book 1, but I have a feeling books 2 and 3, he's going to be incredible. The side characters, and not even necessarily side characters, the other POV characters really stand out in this one. So I'm going to talk about the characters first, since I'm already talking about that. So again, Nail is sort of your pushed into the main story, kind of against his will character. He's a little bit weak. He's kind of whiny. He's not good at a lot of things right away. He's sort of like the reluctant hero archetype. You have Liz Hen, who you don't get a POV chapter of her, but she is a fantastic side character, badass female character, doesn't take shit from people, literally sits on people because she's huge and flexes on dudes that, talk bad to her. She doesn't want to take crap from anybody. You have Dralen, who is one of our main POV characters as well. She's probably the most interesting female protagonist of the story and has the most interesting plot development and character overall throughout the entire book, in my opinion. You have 3 other main POVs. Well, 2, and the third is kind of smaller. So you have Sterling Prentice, who has a couple of POV chapters here and there. He's a little bit more in the background. You have Galt Albrecht, who is part of the Angel Prince's army, but sort of is struggling with what side he wants to be on, what he really wants out of his life. So he is a main POV as well, followed by Tala, who is probably the least interesting POV outside of Nail. Nail as a character isn't great right up front. Tala probably has the least interesting POV overall, in my opinion, but all of them in their own way have, their own branching storyline going on, interactions with the different characters. They're all interesting in their own respect, but Dralen just kind of is the most interesting character by far, in my opinion. She has some funny moments too, where she just really wants to prove herself in certain situations, and it doesn't work out. But I'm not going to spoil anything here. But the characters are probably the best part of this book, and for good reason, because this is very, very character focused. You're introduced to Shawcroft in the prologue of the series, who is Nail's ward. He's kind of like the Gar of the world, from Malice, to his Corbin, or Gandalf to Frodo. He's kind of the stand-in parental figure and watcher of the main character, kind of guiding them on their quest. He's incredibly interesting. And of course, I can't forget Beer Mug, the dog. The last character that I want to mention right up front is Jenko, who's pretty quickly introduced as like the asshole of the story. He is super unlikable, much like Rafe of Malice or Joffrey in A Song of Ice and Fire. He is kind of a piece of human garbage. He picks on people. He talks a lot of shit. He's violent. You know that you're not going to like him, and he actually he's a very unlikable person, but I liked reading about him because he's written really well, sort of in the, similar to the characters I just mentioned, where you want to know more about him. And yeah, he's a dick, like straight up, but he's interesting. So he's fun to actually read about. There's not a ton of overall plot happening right up front. This is very foundational, sort of structural, building up each of these characters and their POVs, and sort of setting the table for what's to come. And I'm expecting the Blackest Heart to go full throttle into it, hit the ground running, and have a lot more action and big epic events happening, simply because largely to its benefit, honestly, Brian Lee Durfee is creating such an in-depth and detailed world here that he goes in deep with the religion of the world and people that dispute the religion. Deep character dives, gets into nitty-gritty details of what certain characters look like, their aspirations, their struggles, their past life, what they want out of life. This is very, very character focused. This is not a big epic plot yet, because he's kind of setting everything up for the future. So, like I said, Blackest Heart is probably going to be much faster paced, which will directly lead into my next point, which is the pacing of the book. Now, this book is not slow to me, but I could see why some people may think that this is a little bit of a slower burn overall, simply because there is a lot of detail and there's a lot of text. Now, I sort of put this between a Robert Jordan writing style and a John Gwynne writing style. Now, the reason I put that in the middle is because John Gwynne is incredible at writing characters and action sequences, and the things that he focuses on, he knocks it out of the park. He does not go into a ton of detail. So whereas in something like Malice, you don't get a lot of character descriptions, you don't really know what anybody looks like, you don't get a feel for really the surroundings. It's more of just their interactions and everything else. And then you have Robert Jordan, who will explain to you every inch of a hut that somebody's in. So there's somewhere in between those two where Brian focuses heavily on the character aspect of it and does sort of like expedition dump every once in a while and give you a lot of detail to soak in. If that's your thing, which it absolutely was for me, I loved The Eye of the World. I loved both Malice and that. I love this because it's a good middle ground. If you love that detail that he's setting up, it's beautifully done. He is an incredible writer. I love his prose style. Again, it's that sort of blend of, I'm going to describe everything, but I kind of know where to draw the line. So I feel like there's no slog to this, if that makes sense. There's no like, oh, he's describing something again. Like, I was always interested in everything that he was telling me. So it is a little bit of a slower read because there's a lot of detail and there's not a ton of plot. It's very much foundational and character focused, but this book is not slow by any means. Now, to the point of world building, and the reason that I say he does this so well in this book is because he goes into extensive detail of religion, as I mentioned. Now, to the point that, so if you've ever read a Brandon Sanderson novel, or probably a lot of fantasy at this point does this, where there's epigraphs leading you into every single chapter, there are 5 sacred texts that exist in the world, like The Way and Truth of Lijan is one of them. There's always an excerpt at the top of every chapter. Sorry, my phone vibrating. At the beginning of every chapter, you get like a piece of this religious text that exists in the world, sort of explaining and world building as you go along. So definitely pay attention to those because they are important. You're always going to get the year and location of like where this next part is taking place. So you're never really lost along the way. Outside of their religion, again, like the characters and their backgrounds are fantastic. I think he is great at character work in these books, and no one felt cheesy or fake or like a carbon copy of other characters. Nail is probably the closest, where he very much starts out as like a traditional, like seemingly to be a chosen one farm boy kind of trope in fantasy, but I'm pretty sure that's not where this character is going at all. You of course have all the great epic fantasy stuff that you're going to want. You have philosophy, you have prophecy, you have, you know, characters dealing with their destinies, things like that. Last couple points about the world building. In addition to everything else, I don't know if this is going to mean something later on, but there's the 5 warrior angels, there's 5 angel stones, you're in the 5 isles, there's the number 5 is everywhere. Maybe that'll be something later on, but definitely pay attention to that. There's very specific explanations of what things look like, especially like the cross that's described. Pay attention to that because he told us in Discord that that's going to mean something. This is so lush with detail and thought and care that it's truly commendable for a debut author. When this was published, when was this published? Back in 2016. So props to him for just going for it. I mean, I know he's influenced heavily by Tad Williams, by Tolkien, by George Martin, by Terry Brooks, all these, you know, titans of fantasy, and you can really see that bleeds onto the page. Bleeds. Bleeds. Oh yeah, guys, this book is signed, by the way, because he sent it to me because he's super fucking awesome. To go along with the world building, there are also just awesome fantasy creatures that you don't really see in that many books anymore. I see them a lot in video games, but you've got merfolk, you've got mermaids, and like badass cannibals of mermaids and merfolk that will come up out of the sea and just rip your shit up. So they're terrifying. There's these things called Kraken in the sea. Basically, sea monsters are terrifying in this world. Don't go in the water. Stay out of the ocean. You've been warned. And this world is brutal. I mentioned when I talked about this on my recent video, this is not a place that you would want to live. Everyone is terrible to everybody. There's no difference between male, female, how people get treated in this world. You will get destroyed one way or another. It's pretty grim at times. It's definitely dark and twisted at times. There are some scenes that I was just like reading it that I was just sitting here like, what the hell? Is this happening right now? Oh, jeez. Without spoiling it, knife hands. In summation, characters great, world building outstanding. The prose I personally loved. That balance between Jordan and Gwen was great to me. The prophecy, everything foundational that was built in this, the little bit of action that there is phenomenal. The intrigue going on in the background, the backstabbing, the politicking, everything is great. This was an incredible debut novel for Brian Lee Durfee. But wow, I can't wait to continue the series and get to book 3, which I believe will hopefully be published in 2021. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Do check out Brian's channel if you haven't already. I don't know what you're doing. He is hilarious. He reviews all the books because he has all the things. He also does music and all kinds of stuff. But he's a fantastic artist. Which, speaking of, shout out to the beautiful artwork of these books because, wow, incredible. Same guy that does Kings of the Wild, so fantastic. Oh, last thing. If you do the audiobook, Tim Gerard Reynolds knocks it out of the park. Fantastic. That is going to wrap up my review for The Forgetting Moon. Happy end of 2020, everybody. Looking forward to a great 2021. Lots more videos upcoming, so like and subscribe. As always, do hit up Patreon if you do want to support the channel financially. That's, of course, always optional, but always appreciated. Do jump in Discord, though, or leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart. If you've read this series, if you're interested at all, let's talk about it. And definitely check out Brian's channel because the guy's hilarious, very approachable. Jump in Discord if you want to chat. He's there. He's awesome. And thank you again to Brian for sending me these books signed. You didn't have to do that, but you were super awesome. And these books are seriously great. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Until next time, keep reading.